A Russian grandmother would look at this scene and quietly smile. Not because she's judging the parents, but because, in Russia, many children grow up without needing constant screens, rewards, or negotiations in the first place. Russian grandmother helping a child tie shoes. You'll see 4-year-olds cleaning the table without being asked, 6-year-olds entertaining themselves for hours, and children who listen the first time without yelling, bribing, or sticker charts. So what's the secret? It's not fear. It's not harsh punishment. And it's definitely not perfect children. It's a deeply rooted parenting philosophy passed down through generations of Russian grandmothers, the babushka method. And today, you'll learn how these families build calm, cooperative kids using connection, structure, and surprisingly simple daily habits. Text overlay. No screens. No rewards. No constant battles. Because here's what most modern parenting advice gets wrong. Children don't always need more entertainment. Sometimes they need more purpose. Snowy Russian apartment blocks, families walking together, grandmother cooking with grandchildren. To understand why Russian grandmothers, or babushki, parent this way, you have to understand the culture they came from. For generations, Russian families lived through hardship, cold winters, economic instability, shared apartments, long work hours. Children weren't treated like the center of the universe. They were treated like important members of the family community. And that difference changes everything. Text overlay. Vospitani. There's a Russian word you'll hear often, vospitani, pronounced vospitanye. It roughly translates to upbringing or moral formation, but the deeper meaning is this: raising a child's character, not just managing their behavior. That means Russian parenting traditionally focuses less on constant praise and more on teaching responsibility, patience, emotional control, and contribution to the household. Child helping knead dough beside grandmother. A Russian grandmother might not say, "Good job," every 5 minutes. Instead, she'll calmly hand the child another task. Not because she's cold, because competence itself is considered confidence building. And surprisingly, modern psychology supports parts of this approach. Research on self-determination theory shows children build stronger internal motivation when they feel capable and useful, not when they're constantly rewarded externally. Fic. External rewards versus internal motivation. This is one reason many Russian families rely less on sticker charts, candy bribes, or endless entertainment. Instead, children are expected to participate in real life early. And here's the important part. This doesn't mean Russian parenting is better than Western parenting. Western cultures often prioritize emotional expression and individuality, which also has huge benefits. But Russian grandmothers bring something many overwhelmed modern parents are searching for: calm authority, clear expectations, and trust in a child's capability. Footage. Child independently putting on winter boots. Because here's the surprising truth. Children often rise to the level of responsibility we quietly expect from them. Young child buttoning coat slowly while grandmother watches patiently. One of the biggest differences in traditional Russian parenting is this: Russian grandmothers often help children less. Not because they're neglectful, because they believe capability creates confidence. There's a common attitude in many Russian homes: if the child can attempt it, the child should attempt it. Text overlay. Capability builds confidence. So a 5-year-old pours their own soup carefully. A 7-year-old walks groceries upstairs. A child learns to solve boredom instead of escaping it instantly with screens. And yes, it's slower at first. Much slower. But here's what Russian caregivers understand. Every time adults rush in too quickly, children subconsciously receive the message, "Maybe you can't handle this alone." Modern developmental psychologists actually echo this idea. Research around autonomy-supportive parenting shows children become more resilient when adults guide without over-controlling. Overhelping versus guided independence. Now compare this to many overwhelmed modern households. Parents are exhausted. Schedules are packed. So doing everything ourselves feels faster. But over time, children may become dependent on constant stimulation, reminders, or emotional negotiation. Russian grandmothers interrupt that cycle early. Instead of saying, "Here, let me do it," they might calmly say, "Try first." And here's what most parents get wrong. Independence is not taught during lectures. It's taught through tiny, daily responsibilities. Child wiping table proudly. Even simple tasks create powerful psychological effects. I contribute. I'm trusted. I matter here. That's the foundation of cooperation. Not fear. Not rewards. Grandmother calmly sitting beside upset child. Here's something many visitors notice in traditional Russian households. Adults often speak softly to children, especially during conflict. That surprises many Western parents who assume obedience comes from strictness or intimidation. But Russian grandmothers often believe emotional control starts with the adult first. Text overlay. Calm is contagious. If a child melts down in public, the response is usually calm, firm, and brief. Not endless negotiation. Not dramatic emotional reactions. Just clear limits. You're upset. I understand. But this behavior is not acceptable. That emotional steadiness matters. Studies on co-regulation show children borrow emotional stability from calm adults. A dysregulated parent often creates a more dysregulated child. Graphic. Nervous system co-regulation. And this is where many modern families struggle. Today's parenting advice sometimes pressures parents to explain every decision endlessly. But Russian caregivers often separate understanding feelings from changing boundaries. A child's emotions are valid, but the family structure remains stable. For example, a child may cry because screen time ended. A Russian grandmother might comfort the child emotionally while still keeping the limit completely unchanged. No bargaining. No extra chances after screaming. And ironically, this predictability often helps children calm down faster. Because boundaries feel safer when they're consistent. Child calming while sitting beside grandmother with tea. This doesn't mean being emotionally distant. In fact, many Russian grandmothers are deeply affectionate. But affection is shown through presence, care, food, routines, and reliability, not constant entertainment. Family cooking together, child peeling potatoes. Russian grandmothers traditionally believe children should participate in adult life early, not just be distracted while adults live separately. That means children cook with adults, clean with adults, visit relatives, sit through conversations, play outside for long periods. And importantly, they learn how to tolerate boredom. Sext overlay. Boredom builds creativity. This is a major cultural difference. In many modern homes, boredom is treated like an emergency. The second a child complains, a screen appears. But Russian caregivers often see boredom differently. Boredom is the doorway to imagination, problem solving, creativity, self-direction. Quiet room, child building imaginary game alone. And research increasingly supports this. Unstructured play has been linked to stronger executive functioning, emotional regulation, and creativity in children. Now, of course, modern life is different. Screens aren't evil. And most parents genuinely need help sometimes. This isn't about guilt. It's about balance. Russian grandmothers simply tend to ask a different question. Instead of, how do I keep my child entertained? They ask, how do I help my child become part of real life? That one mindset shift changes daily parenting dramatically. Entertainment versus participation. Because children who feel useful often need less constant stimulation. And here's the counterintuitive part. The more connected children feel to family responsibility, the less adults often need to fight for cooperation later. Parent asking child to help set the table. This week, choose one moment where you normally use a reward and replace it with responsibility instead. For example, instead of saying, if you behave, you'll get candy, Try tonight, you're helping us prepare dinner because you're part of this family. Pixed overlay. Contribution creates connection. For younger children, ages 3 to 5, keep tasks tiny. Carrying napkins. Matching socks. Watering plants. For older children, increase responsibility gradually. The goal isn't perfection, it's participation. And here's the mistake most parents make. They correct every tiny error. Russian grandmothers often allow imperfect helping because confidence grows through practice, not criticism. Expect resistance at first, especially if your child is used to constant rewards or entertainment. That's normal. Usually within a few weeks, many children begin showing more initiative naturally. Parent kneeling calmly beside upset child. Pick one recurring battle in your home. Bedtime. Screens. Homework. Getting dressed. Now remove the emotional intensity around it. Russian grandmothers rarely turn boundaries into long emotional debates. Instead, they repeat calm expectations consistently. Text overlay. Firm voice. Soft tone. Try phrases like, "I understand you're upset, the answer is still no. I'll help you calm down." Simple, predictable, steady, not angry, not pleading, just calm leadership. And this matters because children often test emotional consistency more than rules themselves. For toddlers, keep explanations short. For older kids, explain rules once, not 15 times during conflict. Now, an important adaptation. This does not mean ignoring emotions. Comfort your child. Stay close. Validate feelings. But don't teach children that emotional escalation changes family boundaries. That's the balance Russian caregivers often model beautifully. Child building fort with blankets instead of using tablet. Don't suddenly remove all screens. That usually backfires. Instead, create small, real-life moments during the day. Maybe your child helps cook breakfast on Saturdays. Maybe evening walks replace 20 minutes of YouTube. Maybe toys stay simpler and more open-ended. Less entertainment, more imagination. Russian grandmothers often fill children's lives with practical activity instead of non-stop stimulation. And surprisingly, children adapt faster than many parents expect. The key is tolerating the sentence, "I'm bored." Because boredom is not danger. It's transition. That uncomfortable moment often becomes creativity a few minutes later. Now, obviously, every family is different. Single parents, neurodivergent children, demanding work schedules, all of these realities matter. So, adapt gently. The goal is not becoming a perfect Russian household. The goal is helping children build internal resilience little by little. Child walking small grocery bag proudly. This final step sounds simple, but emotionally, it's the hardest. Ask yourself, what is my child capable of that I still do for them automatically? Maybe they can dress themselves slower. Maybe they can solve small social conflicts first. Maybe they can carry responsibility you've been afraid to hand over. Overlay. Trust builds responsibility. Russian grandmothers often communicate trust quietly, not through speeches, through expectations. And children feel that trust deeply. Now, of course, safety always comes first. Adapt responsibilities based on age, maturity, and environment. A 4-year-old stirring soup is different from a 10-year-old walking to school independently. But the principle stays the same. Children become more capable when adults stop assuming helplessness. And here's the beautiful part. When children contribute meaningfully, family life often becomes calmer for everyone. Not immediately, not magically, but steadily. Because cooperation grows best where children feel needed, not constantly managed. Warm family dinner. Child laughing with grandmother. Snow falling outside window. At the end of the day, these Russian grandmother methods aren't really about creating perfectly obedient children. They're about raising children who feel capable, connected, grounded in family life. Children who understand that they're not just consumers of attention, but valuable members of a community. And honestly, that's something many modern parents are craving right now. Not more parenting hacks, Not more reward charts, just calmer homes, stronger relationships, and children who slowly learn to trust themselves. Text overlay. Connection plus structure called confidence. You don't need to copy Russian culture perfectly. You don't need freezing weather, Soviet traditions, or a strict grandmother named Olga. You just need small shifts, a little more trust, a little more calm consistency, and a little less pressure to entertain constantly. Because sometimes the most powerful parenting changes are also the simplest. So tell me in the comments, which of these Russian grandmother habits would be hardest for your family to try? And if you want more science-backed parenting wisdom from cultures around the world, subscribe and join this community. Because great parenting isn't about controlling children. It's about preparing them for life with love, structure, and trust.